a sad gift that asks about human nature beyond the fate of despair. A reading essay for those who feel a lack of knowledge or cultivation. At times in our lives, we come up against barriers or find the world feeling difficult and complex. In such moments, books can become powerful tools that open our eyes and deepen our understanding of the world. Today, I would like to introduce you to Fatelessness, Sorstelanszag, written by Hungarian author Imre Kertész. While this book may seem challenging and heavy at first glance, it is, in fact, a profoundly meaningful story, a sad yet precious gift, that makes us think deeply about the most universal aspects of human life and fate. Reading this book may sometimes feel uncomfortable. After all, we are confronting truths that are difficult for us to bear. But it is precisely in this discomfort that we can gain valuable insights into the true meaning of life and the essence of human existence. There is no need to worry about lacking knowledge or cultivation. This book is a story that you can understand with your heart and senses. 1. Fatelessness, a young boy's strange survival story. Fatelessness follows the story of Georgi Kovs, a Hungarian Jewish boy during World War II, as he survives the concentration camps of Auschwitz and Buchenwald. Set against the backdrop of the Holocaust, the most horrific tragedy in history, this book unfolds in a completely different way from the tragic, sentimental survival stories we are familiar with. A normal beginning and sudden interruption. The story begins when Georgi is 15 years old, in Budapest, Hungary. Like other boys his age, he plays with his friends and goes to school, living a relatively ordinary life. But one day, his father is taken away for forced labor simply because he is Jewish. Not long after, Georgi himself is also taken away on a train. To Georgi, this entire process is described in a calm, matter-of-fact way, almost like an adventure or an unavoidable fate. Readers are immediately struck by the shock of this immense tragedy presented as if it were a mundane event. The strange normalcy and adaptation within the tragedy of the camps. Georgi arrives at Auschwitz, the death camp. There, he experiences every kind of human suffering and despair imaginable. He is separated from his family, has his hair shaved off, is stripped of his clothes, and called only by a number. He endures daily threats of death, forced labor, and starvation. Kertész, however, portrays all these horrors through Georgi's eyes in a strangely indifferent and dry manner. In order to endure the hunger, Georgi chews twigs, devises small strategies to obtain slightly better rations. He sleeps next to the corpse of a friend who scratched a carbuncle on his body, without a second thought. He witnesses the guards' violence and the self-interest of his fellow prisoners. In this extreme situation, Georgi adapts quickly to survive. He tries to find his own kind of order and even positive aspects in the camp. For example, he considers it lucky to have survived the brink of death and gone to the hospital, or he feels happiness from a single bowl of soup that was given to him. This depiction causes readers great confusion and discomfort. It makes us wonder, how can one speak of happiness in such a place? The end of a long journey and the beginning of another. Georgi is moved from Auschwitz to Buchenwald and then to Zittau, and as he moves he gets thinner and thinner, the shadow of death growing ever darker. But miraculously, the war ends and the camps are liberated. Georgi returns home alive, but his life can never be the same again. The world that has returned and the unfathomable disconnection. Returning to his hometown, Georgi finds that people do not understand his experiences. Instead, they ask him, how terrible was it, or advise him to forget about it and live an ordinary life. They completely fail to understand his strange happiness or his attitude toward life during the camps. For Georgi, the experiences of the camps have become an integral part of his identity. On the contrary, the outside world now feels strange and hypocritical. In the end of the novel, Georgi asks the fundamental question: if I could find happiness even in the camps, why can't I find happiness in this ordinary world? This question is one of the most important messages in the book, demanding deep reflection from the reader. 2. The unique narrative style of Imre Kertész. Why do we feel uncomfortable? Imre Kertész himself was a survivor of Auschwitz. Therefore, his story goes beyond imagination or research, offering a vivid sense of reality. But it is precisely this that makes Fatelessness special. The way he tells his story is not conventional. A cold and unemotional first-person perspective. The author tells the story through the eyes of the protagonist, Georgie. The world as seen through the eyes of a 15-year-old boy is described without emotional judgment or moral condemnation, merely as an object of observation. It is as if a camera were recording the events coldly and objectively. Phrases like "I was in the concentration camp," "I was hit," and "I was hungry" repeat throughout. This narrative style forces the reader not to emotionally identify with the situation, but to confront it rationally and objectively. Absence of emotion, or highly controlled emotion. In the book, Georgie rarely sheds tears or expresses anger. Even in moments when his parents are being led down the path to death or when his friends die before his eyes, his internal state is portrayed with extreme restraint. This absence of emotion leads to discomfort among readers. Generally, when we read tragic stories, we expect to empathize with the protagonist's sorrow and cry with him. However, by deliberately avoiding this, Cortez encourages rational reflection over emotional appeal. Abnormality within normality. The most shocking part is that Georgie accepts the abnormal conditions of the camp as if they were his normal, everyday life, and even finds positive aspects or moments of happiness within them. When his hunger is momentarily satisfied, when he no longer gets beaten for a day, or when he is treated slightly better than other prisoners, he feels happy. This not only shows the human instinct to adapt and survive under extreme conditions, but also chillingly reveals how the camp system distorts the human mind. Paradox and irony. Cortez skillfully uses paradox and irony in Fatelessness. The protagonist discovers the meaning of life in the death camp, speaks of happiness in the most cruel environment, and finds himself unable to adapt to the free world after liberation. These contradictions continuously challenge the reader, shaking their existing beliefs and encouraging a new perspective on the tragic nature of human existence and history. This unique narrative style transforms Fatelessness into a profound philosophical exploration of the human condition, rather than a simple account of Holocaust survival. While initially strange or even unsettling, it is through this discomfort that we can come to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world. 3. The implications of Fatelessness, fate, humanity, and the meaning of life. Although Fatelessness is rooted in the specific historical context of the Holocaust, it contains messages that transcend time and resonate with everyone. Let's examine why this book is important for those who may feel they lack knowledge or cultivation. Evil in the ordinary. Evil does not always come in an extraordinary form. We often imagine evil as something extraordinary, like villains in movies. Yet Cortez shows how the tragedy of the camps was carried out within a normal system. The guards were just doing their job, and the people who loaded Georgie onto the train were simply following orders. This book chillingly exposes how unimaginable tragedies can arise when ordinary people become indifferent and complicit in a cruel system without any sense of guilt. Message for us: it makes us reflect on whether we are also becoming indifferent or dismissing small injustices, discrimination, or unfairness in our daily lives as just the way it is. It warns us that we could become a part of the hidden evil within the ordinary without realizing it. The meaning of fate or the absence of fate. To what extent can we control our fate? The original title of the book, Sorstelansag, can be translated as without fate or not following fate. Georgie is dragged away against his will, survives the brink of death, and returns home, all determined not by his own will but by chance and external forces. His life appears to be a continuous series of fatelessness. Message for us: we often believe we can forge our own lives and create our own destinies. But this book makes us realize how helpless individuals can be in the face of large historical tides or unpredictable events. Yet at the same time, Georgie's persistence in continuing to live and trying to exist in his own way amidst such helplessness paradoxically reveals the resilience of human existence. It quietly tells us that the essence of humanity lies not in actively creating our own fate, but in accepting whatever fate we are given and continuing to live within it. Human extremity and the paradox of choice. Does happiness exist everywhere? Georgie adapts to the hellish conditions of the camp by giving up his dignity as a human being and even finds happiness and positive aspects within it. This shows how desperately humans try to survive under extreme conditions. At the same time, however, it raises questions about whether giving up one's humanity and adapting to a cruel system is truly a choice or simply a forced survival instinct. Message for us: we all face various hardships and sufferings in life. From Georgie's attitude of "I must somehow survive," we can learn an unyielding will to life. At the same time, however, it makes us reflect on how important it is to preserve our humanity in any situation, and that some forms of adaptation can never be justified. It also prompts us to consider the choices that shape our lives. Trauma and the question of memory: how do wounds become part of life? When Georgie returns home after liberation, people tell him to forget the terrible memories. But for Georgie, the experiences of the camps have become an inseparable part of his essence. His memories are no longer just painful pasts, they have become a way for him to understand the world and define himself. Message for us: we all experience injuries and traumas in our lives. This book encourages us to reflect on the process of not simply forgetting these traumas, but accepting them as important parts that shape our lives and identities. It offers insight into how we understand and remember our past pain and how those memories will affect our future. Understanding universal human conditions: we are all connected. Even though Fatelessness addresses the specific tragedy of the Holocaust, its themes are universal. What is humanity? What is life? What is suffering and happiness? The feelings of alienation, loneliness, and the search for meaning in life that Georgie experiences are emotions we have all felt in some form or another. Message for us: this book cultivates our ability to understand and empathize with others' suffering. It shows how the story of someone with a completely different background and experience can lead to a profound understanding of our own lives. Knowledge and cultivation are not about knowing more information, but about understanding and respecting others' lives and reflecting on our own. Fatelessness plants the seed of that variability in our hearts. Conclusion: Fatelessness and the brave questions it poses to our lives. Imre Kertész's Fatelessness is certainly not an easy book to read. It unsettles our hearts, shakes our common sense, and sometimes forces us to confront the truths we would rather avoid. However, it is precisely in this discomfort that the opportunity for true growth lies. This book poses fundamental questions to us: what is happiness? Why do I live? Is my life my own fate, or merely a fragment in a vast current? Knowledge and cultivation are not only found in lofty language or complicated theories. Rather, true wisdom and cultivation arise from the pain and reflection inherent in ordinary lives. Fatelessness is more than a fragment of a special history. It is a story about the universal fate that all humans face and the meaning of life that emerges from it. Through this book, we learn the courageous attitude of a boy who embraced life even in suffering, and we can look at our own lives with a broader and deeper perspective. I sincerely wish this book will spark a small spark in your lives, becoming a reliable companion on your journey to think, question, and seek answers.